He had seen every kind of performance imaginable, but when this man walked onto the stage carrying canvases painted with visions that existed only in his mind, yet somehow revealed truths that sighted people had never seen, Simon Cowell realized he was about to witness something that would redefine what it means to create art from the invisible world. The America's Got Talent theater hummed with familiar energy, but tonight there was an undercurrent of mystical anticipation mixed with profound curiosity, as if the audience sensed they were about to experience something that challenged their understanding of vision, reality, and the relationship between what exists in the physical world and what emerges from the landscapes of altered perception. His name was David Chen, 26 years old, walking carefully towards center stage with a white cane in one hand and an art portfolio in the other, carrying the weight of Charles Bonnet syndrome, a neurological condition that had replaced his lost vision with vivid, complex hallucinations that he had somehow transformed into the most extraordinary form of visionary art anyone had ever witnessed. David wore a simple black shirt that suggested both artistic sensibility and practical accommodation for someone who navigated the world without sight, though there was something in his bearing that indicated he was constantly observing and creating from visual experiences that existed entirely within his neurological perception rather than external reality. David had lost his sight in a car accident at age 22, but 6 months later, Charles Bonnet syndrome had begun generating elaborate visual hallucinations, detailed scenes, fantastical creatures, impossible architectural structures, and surreal landscapes that appeared with photographic clarity, despite complete absence of actual visual input. Most people with his condition found the hallucinations disturbing, but David had discovered something remarkable. He could translate these phantom visions into paintings that revealed artistic truths no sighted person could access. David represents one of the most extraordinary cases of Charles Bonnet syndrome. Combined with artistic translation, we've documented, Dr. Sarah Martinez, his neurologist, had explained. His condition generates remarkably detailed visual hallucinations, but unlike most patients who find these experiences disruptive, David has learned to engage with his phantom visions as a source of artistic inspiration that transcends normal visual reality. During art therapy sessions designed to help him cope with vision loss, David began describing the elaborate visual experiences his syndrome was generating. When encouraged to attempt translating those phantom images onto canvas, despite his blindness, David discovered he could paint from active visual experiences that existed entirely within his altered neurological perception. As David's hallucinatory painting abilities had developed, he discovered that his phantom visions often contained symbolic content, emotional insights, and artistic perspectives that seemed to transcend personal experience to reveal universal truths about human nature, spiritual reality, and the hidden dimensions of existence that ordinary vision couldn't perceive. David had initially been devastated by his vision loss and terrified by the onset of elaborate hallucinations that made him question his mental stability. But as he learned to work with his Charles Bonnet syndrome rather than against it, David realized that his phantom visions had given him access to artistic dimensions that physical sight could never reveal. I discovered that my hallucinations weren't just random neurological noise. They were showing me visual truths about reality that I could never have seen with physical eyes, David had explained to Dr. Martinez during one of their sessions. When I paint what my syndrome shows me, I'm translating visions that seem to come from beyond normal human perception. David's hallucinatory paintings had begun attracting attention from both medical and artistic communities when images of his work were shared at conferences about vision disorders and alternative perception. Neurologists were fascinated by the artistic coherence of his syndrome-generated imagery, while art critics were amazed by the depth, symbolism, and emotional power of paintings created from hallucinations. David's artwork represents a new form of visionary art that exists at the intersection of neurological condition and spiritual insight. Dr. Jennifer Wong, a specialist in consciousness studies, had observed, His paintings suggest that Charles Bonnet syndrome might sometimes provide access to forms of perception that transcend ordinary visual reality, rather than simply replacing it with random imagery. But David's most remarkable discovery was that his hallucinatory paintings seemed to resonate deeply with viewers who had never experienced visual hallucinations themselves. People who observed his artwork often reported profound emotional responses, spiritual insights, and recognition of truths that they couldn't articulate, but felt immediately upon viewing his phantom visions translated onto canvas. David's paintings affect viewers in ways that conventional art rarely achieves, explained Dr. Michael Chen, who studied audience response to visionary art. When people observe artwork created from hallucinations, they seem to access parts of their own consciousness that are usually dormant, as if his phantom visions reveal universal truths that exist beyond individual perception. David had begun incorporating therapeutic elements into his hallucinatory painting practice, creating artwork specifically designed to help viewers access states of meditation, emotional healing, and spiritual insight through observation of his syndrome-generated visions. His work showed that hallucinations could become tools for collective transcendence rather than individual pathology. This led David to wonder whether his hallucinatory paintings could reach larger audiences, whether his demonstration that Charles Bonnet syndrome could generate profound artistic vision, could benefit people who had never considered the creative potential that existed within altered states of consciousness and neurological differences. Dr. Wong had suggested that David consider sharing his work on a larger platform to raise awareness about the artistic possibilities that could emerge from vision disorders and the ways that hallucinations could become sources of universal spiritual and emotional insight, rather than just medical symptoms to be managed. David represents a new paradigm for understanding Charles Bonnet syndrome and visionary consciousness, Dr. Wong had argued. His work could help people recognize that altered perceptual states can become sources of profound artistic and spiritual gifts, rather than just neurological challenges, and that phantom visions might provide access to truths that ordinary sight cannot perceive. Standing now backstage at AGT, David felt the familiar presence of his phantom visions beginning to form, elaborate visual experiences generated by his Charles Bonnet syndrome that would guide his artistic demonstration regardless of his complete inability to see the physical stage or audience. Tonight, he would attempt to demonstrate that vision loss combined with hallucinations could become sources of extraordinary artistic expression, that Charles Bonnet syndrome could generate profound spiritual and emotional insight, and that the intersection of neurological difference and artistic courage could create experiences that revealed truths about reality that physical sight could never access. He carried a small easel and painting supplies that he could manipulate through touch and spatial memory, preparing to create art guided entirely by the phantom visions his syndrome would generate in response to the energy and emotional atmosphere he could sense around him. The audience's reaction was immediate curiosity mixed with respectful reverence. Here was someone who would literally paint from visions that existed only within his neurological condition, yet whose artwork had been described as more spiritually profound than most sighted artists ever achieved. Simon leaned forward, sensing that David's presence represented something more significant than typical artistic demonstration, someone whose story would challenge assumptions about vision, reality, and the relationship between neurological conditions and artistic capability. "Hello, David," Simon said gently, noticing the ease with which David navigated the stage despite his complete blindness. "My name is David Chen," he began, his voice carrying the calm confidence of someone who had learned to create beauty from neurological challenges that others feared. "I lost my sight 4 years ago, but I developed Charles Bonnet syndrome, which generates elaborate visual hallucinations. I've learned to paint these phantom visions, creating artwork from images that exist only within my altered perception. Tonight, I want to demonstrate hallucinatory painting, creating art guided by visions that my neurological condition generates in response to the energy and emotional atmosphere I sense around me. What you'll witness isn't imagination or memory, it's translation of active visual experiences that exist entirely within my syndrome-altered consciousness. Simon felt something shift in his understanding of what he was about to witness. This wasn't going to be a demonstration of overcoming disability. This was someone who had transformed neurological difference into access to artistic dimensions that ordinary vision couldn't reach. You're saying you can create art based on hallucinations that you're experiencing right now? One of the judges asked with obvious fascination. David nodded with quiet confidence. My Charles Bonnet syndrome generates detailed visual experiences that respond to environmental energy, emotional atmosphere, and spiritual presence. These phantom visions appear with photographic clarity and often contain symbolic content that reveals universal truths about human experience and spiritual reality. What you're about to see is artwork created from visions that my condition generates in real time. These aren't random neurological symptoms. They're coherent visual experiences that seem to provide access to dimensions of reality that physical sight cannot perceive. David positioned his easel at center stage and prepared his painting materials through practiced touch and spatial awareness. As he settled into readiness, his Charles Bonnet syndrome began generating the elaborate phantom visions that would guide his artistic creation. I'm beginning to see the first vision my syndrome is generating, David said as he started painting, his hands moving confidently across the canvas despite his blindness. There's a figure made of light walking through a forest of crystallized music, trees that sing with colors I don't have names for. The audience watched in fascinated silence as David painted with remarkable precision and artistic coherence, translating phantom visions into visual art that emerged from his neurological condition rather than external observation. The light figure is reaching towards something that appears to be a doorway made of flowing water. But as I paint it, I can see that the water contains memories, all the experiences that connect every person in this theater to each other through shared human emotions. David continued painting, his phantom visions guiding every brushstroke as he translated elaborate hallucinations into artwork that seemed to capture spiritual and emotional truths that transcended individual experience. Now I'm seeing a landscape where the ground is made of musical notes, and the sky contains floating gardens that represent the dreams people carry but rarely acknowledge. There are bridges made of light connecting different levels of consciousness, and figures walking across these bridges represent the courage it takes to transform challenges into gifts. As David's hallucinatory painting continued, it became clear that his phantom visions weren't random imagery, but coherent symbolic content that seemed to address universal themes of transformation, connection, and spiritual growth. The final element my syndrome is showing me is a tree whose roots grow downward into earth, made of crystallized tears, representing all the pain that becomes wisdom, while its branches reach upward into light that contains the laughter of every person who has ever found joy despite suffering. When David completed his hallucinatory painting, he stepped back from the easel and turned toward the audience, unable to see the artwork he had created, but confident in his translation of the phantom visions his Charles Bonnet syndrome had generated. The audience remained in profound silence as they processed not just the artistic beauty of what David had created while blind, but the recognition that his hallucinatory visions had somehow captured spiritual and emotional truths that resonated deeply with their own experiences. Then applause began, not typical entertainment appreciation, but the kind of recognition that follows transcendent artistic experience, acknowledgement of having witnessed creativity that emerged from neurological difference, yet revealed universal truths about human consciousness and spiritual reality. Simon stood up from the judges' table, understanding that David had demonstrated something far more significant than artistic ability. He had proven that vision loss could become a pathway to enhanced perception, that hallucinations could generate profound artistic insight, and that Charles Bonnet syndrome could provide access to spiritual and emotional dimensions that ordinary sight could never reach. "David," Simon said, as he walked onto the stage to examine the painting more closely, "what you've just created challenges everything I thought I knew about vision, reality, and the sources of profound artistic truth. You haven't just painted while blind, you've shown us that your hallucinations provide access to spiritual and emotional insights that most sighted people never perceive. You've proven that neurological differences can become sources of extraordinary artistic gifts that reveal truths about reality that ordinary vision cannot access." David smiled with the peaceful satisfaction of someone who had learned to transform devastating loss into transcendent gift. "I learned that losing my physical sight wasn't the end of my ability to see. It was the beginning of access to forms of vision that revealed spiritual truths about reality that my eyes had never been able to perceive." As the golden buzzer activated and confetti fell, Simon said, "David, you've proven that the most profound artistic vision sometimes emerges from the places where physical sight ends and spiritual perception begins, and that extraordinary art can be created from the intersection of neurological difference and the courage to trust visions that exist beyond ordinary reality." 6 months later, David established the Phantom Vision Institute, teaching people to explore the creative and spiritual potential within altered states of consciousness and neurological differences. His techniques prove valuable not just for people with vision disorders, but for anyone seeking to access forms of perception and creativity that transcended ordinary sensory experience. 6 months later, David established the Phantom Vision Institute, teaching people to explore creative potential within altered consciousness and neurological differences. His techniques proved valuable for vision disorder patients and anyone seeking transcendent perception. David revolutionized how we think about vision loss and hallucinatory experience, explained Dr. Martinez. He proved that Charles Bonnet syndrome could become a source of profound artistic gifts rather than just a medical condition. The phantom painter who created from invisible worlds had demonstrated that vision loss could enhance artistic capability, that hallucinations could reveal spiritual truths, and that profound art emerged from neurological difference and the courage to paint realities beyond ordinary perception.